Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, morimili wanji, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so very honored that you are joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show in the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcast. And please tell all your family and friends all about the podcast. Our guest today is Ben Feller. He is a former chief White House correspondent for Associated Press, and he's here to celebrate his debut picture book, Big Problems, Little Problems. Before we invite Ben into the studio, we want to invite you to connect with us on social media. So many places to connect. Facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, at Reading With Your Kids on TikTok. Be sure to check out our Reading With Your Kids page on Pinterest. And if you are on Twitter, please connect with us at Jedley Magic. And we would be so delighted if you could visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. You can sign up for our free newsletter. You can also use the contact button at the top of the page to let us know what we're doing right, let us know what we could be doing better, and let us know who you would like to hear on a future episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Joining us right now from New York City, our guest is here today to celebrate his debut picture book. Please welcome to the show author and father and the author of Big Problems, Little Problems, Ben Feller. Hey, Ben, how are you?
I am doing great. So excited to chat with you and your listeners and to be focused on this book. It's been fun.
I'm really excited for you. We'll talk a little bit about what you've been doing before you became a children's author, but why don't we start by you just telling us all about this great picture book?
Yes, thank you so much. So the book is really about how to make life a little bit easier. That goes for our young kids who get frustrated by problems that they find overwhelming, but also for the parents in helping the kids understand how to convert big problems into little problems and how to have some perspective ourselves that the things that frustrate us really aren't that big of a deal. And so it began with my raising my son and figuring out, hey, you know what works? When I slow the moment down for a little bit, when I get down on one knee, because I'm a big guy, so let's get eye to eye here. Let's make everything a little bit smaller and slower and breathe. Solve the problem, which could be zipping up his sweater or finding a toy. And then seeing him realize that wasn't that big of a deal. Let's celebrate it. Let's do our secret handshake. Let's have a hug. Boom. On to the next thing. He's feeling better. I'm feeling better. That was just trial and error of parenting, and it worked. When I decided to write the book was the day that I was so frustrated getting caught in a traffic jam in New York City. I just thought it was the end of the world, like parents do when something goes wrong and we lose our perspective. And my son, from his car seat, saw me, heard me, and said, Daddy, don't get frustrated. Is this a big problem or a little problem? And I looked at him through the rearview mirror, and I'm like, oh, my gosh, he's getting it. I feel both proud as can be and kind of embarrassed, like, okay, he's right. I should breathe. It's just a traffic jam. The lights will change. The tunnel will clear. We will get home. Little problem. And that was the story I had in mind, and now it's come to fruition.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad you didn't react like some parents would to turn around and tell you, kid, shut up. I don't need you. Don't
well,
need
I think that the profanity that had come out of my mouth made me feel like, all right, I've already checked the box on bad parenting. I won't repeat what I said, and I didn't put it in the book. But let's suffice to say, Sam knew I was frustrated.
Well, Sam's a very perceptive guy.
Yeah.
You know, you bring up a really good point. Little things can frustrate all of us, but especially kids. And kids, when they don't have the coping skills that hopefully we've developed by the time we're in our 20s, 30s, or almost 100s, you know, they can, you know, a little thing like buttoning your shirt or zipping your jacket can just ruin their day.
Yeah, they don't have two things. They don't have the coping skills that you mentioned, and they don't have perspective to know the difference between what's a big problem and a little problem. And the reason why they don't is that they haven't learned those things yet. They're not supposed to have them.
Mm-hmm.
So we as parents forget the 4-year-old version of ourselves. Of course we do. So when we have big problems trying to organize an entire organization at work, or we don't have a babysitter because somebody canceled and there's no daycare and we've got 5 minutes to figure it out, like we've got our big problems. We look at our kids and like, if you can't zip up your coat, it's not that big of a deal. Calm down. Well, that's not helpful because they don't know the difference. For them, they're not being able to do something. It feels bad inside. Their chest gets tight and they just need help. So we can provide the coping skills by showing them how to zip the coat so they can learn how to do it, helping them find the toy. But we can also provide perspective. And perspective doesn't come from condescending to somebody and saying, calm down, not a big deal. It's showing them, right? Like, look, we solved that in 15 seconds. There's really nothing more to talk about. Don't you feel better? No, you do it. Okay. Look, good. Tomorrow when this happens and it gets stuck, oh, I see. Line up the grooves. Good. That's how you turn a big problem into a little one. But it's up to us to teach that.
Yeah. And we do forget the fact that there is our 4-year-olds, our 3-year-olds are learning everything. You know, we forget the fact that we came into the world, unlike our dogs and our cats who have all these instincts, we come into the world at zero.
Right.
And we need to build it all up, and we need to learn everything from scratch.
And one of the best parts about seeing the reaction to the book is not parents saying, oh, I never thought of that. It's parents saying, oh, I need to remember this. Remember that they come in at zero. Remember that I learned these lessons decades ago. And we have to, it's basically a playful reminder. Slow down. This is what works for me. Kneeling, breathing, laughing, rewarding small victories. Maybe you have your own way. But whatever your way is, take the time to do it. And by the way, listen to your kids because they're paying attention. So it's not just a matter of our problem solving. It's, okay, are these really big problems? If I start writing an email and here in the New York City, way of life, I get to a subway and I have no internet. How important is it that I gotta get that email before it's not. Just save it in drafts. What if you lost the email? Oh my gosh, craft it again, right? But we get wrapped up because we got to get the next task done, and our kids see that. And it really, we can model by saying, "No, I'll just do the next one." And I've had to learn that myself. I going through the launch of the book, there have been times, even in the last week, where I've said to myself, "Ben, this is not a big problem. Don't just write about it. You got to preach it." And my son sees that. He sees, okay, yeah, we got it. We'll just get the next train. Life's a little easier.
Good for him. That's it. It is. It's a really important lesson for all of us because we are super, as we say here in Boston, we're all wicked busy. And we're trying to do 1,000,001 things. And it's important for us to remember that we can get by if we only do 1,000,000. And
Right.
but most of all, what we have to do is to love our kids and embrace the time that we have with them.
Yeah, and reminders are important. And so, the messages I'm getting from people who have started to receive their book, they come in two forms usually. One is these amazing pictures or little videos of the kids, because the illustrations done by my colleague, Mercedes Lopez, are fun and creative and dynamic, and she really brought our story to life. So it's visually just so attractive. But also the stories from the parents of, I got something out of this. One person I chatted with said, I don't even really think this is a kid's book. I mean, it's packaged like one, but it has a real message in there about life and perspective. And so as the writer telling my personal story of raising Sam, to see other people's reactions come through, either in the smiles of their kids or sort of the reminders for the grown-ups, really rewarding. That's as a writer what you want. It's about reaching the audience and having all these different reactions that I never even would have thought of. It's truly fun.
Yeah. I think one of the things we forget, and it's too bad, we look at, as adults, we look at picture books and it's like, oh yeah, it's for kids. My kid's too old for those now, so I'll never pick up a picture book again. In reality, we're all experiencing picture books, but moving picture books. We sit down, we spend every day we learn a new story by watching a picture book on TV, a TV series or a movie or a video. And picture books are just the same thing. They're just short stories told in pictures with words.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And again, going back to the theme of as parents, we need reminders. So my son is now 11, so he's moved out of largely the picture book stage, although he's partial to this one. But, when I would read picture books to him or with him earlier, those types of books are truly evocative. There's one that he has in his library, I think, we read it so long ago, Mommy Blows a Kiss. And it was about the affection between the mom and the son. And when she blows the kiss, it goes like around the store clerk and under the fruit aisle at the grocery store. And, I can tell you that story now, but I'm picturing in my mind the illustrations. And I didn't think, I can't wait to get this done. This is for him. I would always enjoy that and think about the creativity that went into it, because it's all part of the story. Mm-hmm. That's what we want. We want to be brought into the story. And you can do that through novels, and you can do that through music. You can do that through all kinds of literature. But picture books have a place, and I totally agree with you. I think adults still get a lot out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you are right. The illustrations in Big Problems, Little Problems are great, and they're very different. They're not the Disney kind of, and nothing wrong with this, but your illustrator has a very distinct style, and this has a very distinct feel and look to it, and it's quite beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. It's personally, it was fun to see how she went with my words, but from an audience perspective, when you get into themes like frustration and patience, how do you illustrate those? And she really dove into it with the frustration, the snarls of a zipper that feels caught, the frustration of a son and a father caught in a maze and looking for the way out. Like, those were all her ideas and her themes pulling it into life. The joy that comes with a hug, the silliness and the levity of our secret handshake that she put into imagery. It's really fun. And I agree with you. It's very distinctive. It looks different, but boy, did she capture it. And again, that's what you want. Mm-hmm. That's really what you want, is that fit. Mm-hmm. And, the cover is the two of us hugging, and I'm crouching down to get to his height. And it's the celebrating of turning a big problem into a little one and solving it. And boy, it feels perfect.
Yeah. And just, you mentioned it a couple of times, and I just want to highlight it. A lot of times as adults, we'll bend over to talk to kids, and that's cool. But I think what you're talking about, crouching down, getting on your knee, bringing yourself down to their level, it really makes a difference. And it was something I discovered when I was working with kids with severe developmental disabilities. Just lowering myself to get to their level made a difference, and it was different than bending down, because I was still over them at that point. And when we can get down on our kids' level, it makes a huge difference. And I really recommend that to everybody who hasn't learned that lesson yet.
Well, it's fun to hear you say that, and even the difference between getting down on a knee and crouching over someone. Because what I remember as I'm listening to you is, and I see a lot of kids do this, when they feel embarrassed or frustrated or sad, they look down. Mm-hmm. They lower their head, they lower their eyes. It's like a physical letting down of themselves. And so if you're standing over them and their head is down, you're not connecting on any level. So what I would do is get down to his level and then gently, pick his chin up and say, let's reset here. Look at daddy. Okay. What's the problem? I can't do this. Okay. Well, then let's do it together. Zip. All right. Instantly we figured it out. So you feel better. It takes a second, but now you do it. You feel the power. Okay. It's just hard for me to picture doing all that at 6'1", standing over him, right? Let's get to his level. But eye contact and warmth and compassion and breathing all go into the problem solving. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know that. I kind of felt like, what would I need here? And some of that was intuitive. And then when it worked, as I said earlier, parenting is trial and error. Hey, big problems, little problems. He's liking it. He's loving it. We were going to handshake. Let's go with it, right?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you've had a lot of experience spending time with people who are solving big problems. you were the chief White House correspondent for Associated Press, the largest news organization in the world. You were the guy that asked the first questions at a presidential news conference. Did you learn this idea of making big problems into little problems from any of the leaders that you covered?
I think I learned it. It's easier to answer that question in retrospect. It wasn't like, it was this linear path of I did this and now I'm going to turn it into this book or this next stage of my career. Everything is easier to see looking back. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure that I learned the problem solving from the people I covered, but I learned it in large part from having covered them, because the job of journalism is constantly problem solving. How am I going to figure out this information and make it accessible and accurate and clear and important to a lot of readers? And then as soon as you solve that, if you do it really well at the highest stakes at the White House against the biggest, most competitive press corps in the world, your reward is you start all over again the next day with a blank screen and a different problem that they also don't want to talk to you about. Mm-hmm. And over again, finding out the information, getting it right, getting it first, and then turning it into stories that matter to people. That informed the book in the sense that my career and a lot of my life has been about making the complicated simple for readers and how do we solve problems. Mm-hmm. And I brought that mindset into parenting. And I didn't think about that necessarily when I was writing the book because it was just so personal and passionate. But the more I think back through interviews, I'm like, yeah, it's my style. It's consistent with my career, and everything I've done in the last several years has definitely been informed by what it was like to sit in that front seat and ask questions of the president. It's definitely has prepared me for other things in life, for sure.
Yeah. One of the things I like to ask anytime I have somebody in the media on the program, I think a huge part of my job as a parent, now my kids are adults, but I thought that at the time when they were younger that it was really important for me to help my kids become media literate and help them learn how to discern what information they could trust and what information they had to verify. It's, I think, even more of an issue now because kids are inundated with information from all different sources. Not all of them are reliable or reputable. What advice could you give to parents in how they can help their kids become media literate and know what sources to trust and what not to trust and to question and how to go about asking those questions?
So it's the last thing you said that I think would be my guidance. It's to question. And specifically, if you're a young reader and don't know the media landscape, and like, how am I supposed to figure this out? Who do I trust? Your parents or the adults around you who you respect and who do have experience in this, I would ask them, how did you decide to follow that news outlet? Why do you always watch that morning show? When you go online and your newspaper of choice, your news source of choice is X. Why? And that way you're getting past I'm reading this and following these sites because my parents do. Mm-hmm. That's almost like an inheritance of news judgment. It's, well, why? And parents are going to have to do a little bit of work in that situation. Well, let me deconstruct my thinking. Sometimes it's going to be because of political views. This news outlet reinforces how I feel about politics in American life. And so I like that because we sort of talk to each other. That's not how I would do it, right? I like the diversity of views, but mostly as a former reporter, I am an ardent fan of accuracy. What are the facts? How do you put them into context and how can you defend them? And so, there is such a thing as an empirical truth, right? This is the vote that happened. These are the elements of the bill. Here's why they did it. Here's how it's going to affect you. Here's how it's going to affect the election, right? Facts and analysis. And so, that's what I would do is just be a good questioner. Help me understand it. Why do you listen to that outlet? Why do you like them? And, I think it's going to be a really interesting experience for grown-ups in that situation because they're saying, hey, I'm raising a critical thinker and I'm helping. Yeah. And when I was a kid, we read the local newspaper. Why? Because they brought it to the door.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like there was 5 choices and we could have an analytical discussion about it. It's like, that's what you read.
Mm-hmm.
And then as life got more complex and, there was a thing called the internet. And now all these newspapers and sources are online. And now, boy, it's overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
It's overwhelming. So that's how I would start.
Yeah. We have a number of interns working here on the podcast this summer. It's like insane how many interns we have. And all of them are students at Emerson College here in Boston. And they're all looking to get into journalism. If you had one piece of advice for them, what would it be?
I think that the elements of reporting are foundational to so many parts of life, so many elements of work. And they're as important today as they were, 25, 30 years ago when I got my start. So I wouldn't worry about the latest social media platform, storytelling in 13 seconds. How do I get more followers? I wouldn't worry about pumping up a resume by grabbing as many opportunities as you can to make it look good. What I would do is get the elements of storytelling right, right? Practice on accuracy, on relevance to the reader, thinking like a reader, checking your facts, keeping your writing clear, concise, tight, attention to detail, right? Have you checked it? Have you double checked it? I'm telling you, those foundational skills will allow you to compete with the other young interns and get that one spot, get that first job, right? I don't have experience yet, but in everything that I've studied and every volunteer job I have, every internship I have, I put accuracy first. I put my audience first. I put attention to detail first. I put work ethic first. Because when you're young and you can't say I did this job versus that job, you can have traits, attention, and that's what I would do. And then you're going to get the first job. Yeah. And now not only are you going to have those values, you're going to say, and here are my clips. Here's my segments, right? That's what I would do.
Awesome. Hey, I'm going to ask you in a minute if you've caught the kids' picture book writing bug, but before I do, I got to ask you, how cool is it to fly on Air Force One?
It's really cool. It's this one I've also learned in retrospect when I was trying to fly out of LaGuardia here in New York, and they said, we're 33rd in line for takeoff. And I'm like, oh my God, this never happened. The president got on the plane, sat down, and we started to take off 500 miles an hour. But I didn't have to wait until later chapters to know it. I mean, I would pull in to Andrews Air Force Base in that little Honda Civic that I used to have and see the tail of the plane and say, okay, good. I didn't miss the plane. Rule number 1. And it would, we'd walk up and see the president get up the front steps, and we'd hurry to the back, and the press corps would go up. And it's the thing about when you see the White House press corps is it all looks so big, the East Room and the news conferences. But when you're in it, it's amazing to me how small it gets, right? Because when I was on Air Force One, there was only room for like 12 of us. Mm-hmm. There was one wire service reporter, one newspaper reporter, one TV reporter, some still photographers, and a camera crew. And we would rotate so that everybody got a shot. But man, the world gets really small. The president would come back. Hey guys, how you doing? Ready for today? And if they took questions, they would get quiet. And if I was on the plane, they'd start with me. Mm-hmm. They would just stop and I would get to set the tone. It was amazing experience. And also a really cool airplane.
Yeah. Sounds like it. Hey, so have you caught the kids' picture book writing bug? Are there going to be more books coming from Ben Feller?
I hope so. I have got the bug. I would probably broaden it out to the joy of seeing my work and seeing people's reaction to it. So what do I do with that now? It could be another children's book. Yes. It could be a different kind of book. As we've just talked about, I've got a lot of experience in covering politics, so I might do something with that. I'm going to allow myself the chance to soak in the reaction to this and how it makes me feel, because this should be fun. This should be fulfilling. And that's what I want to drive my next decision. Although I did have this idea. If I make it through my son's teenage years and he gets to college, my next book might be Big Problem, Not My Problem. I'm going on record with you first that's my idea. Let's see how that flows.
I love that. Yes. Good luck with those teenage years. My son had a really, Well, no, he had an easy time. I had a rough time getting through.
Right.
But we're awesome right now, and that's really exciting. It's been wonderful speaking to you. Please tell everybody where they can go to find out more about big problems, little problems.
Well, you can go to my website, which is aptly named bigproblemslittleproblems.com, and it tells you easy places where you can buy the book. It has some background on my son and I. We're posting lots of fun updates on interviews and reviews, and there's even a curriculum guide that I put together for teachers and those in the education community if they want to use the book in their class and show their students how to decipher between big problems and little problems. So that's one site. But if they don't even want to do that, hey, anywhere books are sold, go online, go to your local bookstore. They'll either have it or they can get it for you. And I want to say thank you so much for having me on. I enjoyed this conversation a lot. It's so fun to be able to share it.
Yeah. Just one last thing before you go. You're used to people knowing millions of people are reading your words in the newspaper, online. But now, hopefully, there are going to be millions of families snuggled up together, reading your words in a very, very different way. Have you taken the time to think about that? And if you have, how does that make you feel?
It's the hardest thing to put into words. It's tremendous pride. One of my friends sent me a text message last week, and it was a video of their 3-year-old son. And it was like a baby cam because his room is on a different side of the house. And in the video, the little boy is half asleep, but not asleep, kind of flopping around. And it's just him in the room. And he says, "Oh, no, I spilled my coffee and I'm going to miss my train and be late for work. This is a big problem." And then he put his head on the pillow and started to fall asleep. He was reciting from my book.
Wow.
And, they live on the other side of the country because of the pandemic. I've never got to meet their baby, now a toddler. And so the first words I hear from him are his reading my words. And he's comforting himself and having joy with it. So, it's all about reaching. I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. It's about reaching that one person. But I would never have expected that, and those moments are starting to come into my inbox, and it's really, really wonderful. Thank you for asking.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of Big Problems, Little Problems, Ben Feller. Hey, Ben, thanks for being with us.
I enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Margot Denemy. She'll be joining us from Toronto, Ontario to celebrate you inside and out. That's the next episode of the podcast. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, want to start by thanking our guest, Ben Feller. Please be sure to check out Big Problems, Little Problems. Isn't it cool we get to talk to someone who hung out on Air Force One with President Bush and President Obama? So cool. I also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Nicole Belcastro, Ashley Contreras, Rain Pan, Mirabella Q. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place. And you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.